Okay, welcome back, everyone. I'm going to share this topic with you about what is merit. This is an important aspect of Kamma that you'll need to understand as you're practicing and making your way closer and closer to enlightenment. So I'm going to share this teaching with you, and I'm going to be using a lot of the words of the Buddha here to be able to help you understand what it is that he shared on this important topic. Let me switch over here online. Okay, there we go. Everyone can see it online. Okay, so what merit is this is generosity that you're practicing and directing it towards the continued sharing of the teachings of the Buddha that are helping other people to then get access to the teachings and be able to make their way closer and closer to enlightenment. As you've heard at different times throughout the course, you're going to need to practice generosity in all different directions. But whenever you're practicing generosity towards like a temple or a Dame practitioner, a teacher, helping people to get access to the teachings, either sharing your time, effort, energy, or resources without any expectation of anything in return, we call this merit. So I have this little diagram to be able to help you be able to understand it that I'll show you here in a moment. The Buddha, when he talks about producing merit, he talks about making offerings to individuals who are in one of the 4 stages of enlightenment or practicing for one of those 4 stages. You're going to see his words here in a minute. This was referred to during the lifetime of the Buddha as the Aryan Sangha. Right? So this was like what we would translate this to be is the noble community, the people who are practicing the teachings very closely, because by supporting people who are in one of the 4 stages of enlightenment, you're helping that individual to be able to get deeper and deeper into their practice. But also if they're interested in teaching, then they're able to share those teachings with others. But more importantly, you're coming in contact with somebody who's deeply practicing the teachings that has deep wisdom around the teachings, so that then you'll be able to gain that wisdom too by talking to them and asking them questions. So by supporting the noble community or the people who are practicing the teachings very closely, it helps these teachings to continue in the world. Because if you can imagine, during the lifetime of a Buddha, there must have just been countless people that were practicing his teachings by the time that he had died, people learning and practicing, but not everybody was practicing the teachings very closely. You'll have kind of a core group of people that are around the teacher who are practicing very deeply and very closely, but then you'll have people kind of on the outer edges that are kind of practicing and coming to classes and showing up and learning a little bit here and there, but maybe they're not taking it in such a dedicated way. And when the Buddha talked about practicing merit and making offerings to people to help continue the sharing of his teachings, he talked about sharing with virtuous practitioners, people who are practicing very deeply. And keep in mind that when we're talking about generosity and making offerings, the Buddha was a prince. He was destined to become a king, so he was very rich and very wealthy. He didn't teach generosity as a way to enrich himself. He was already rich, and he stepped away from that and entered into this life of homelessness. But he talked about the extensive amount of generosity that he practiced during his last life, but also the generosity that he practiced in previous lives, and that's what helped him to be able to get to enlightenment as a Buddha in his last life. So he knew that him practicing generosity is what trained his mind to let go of craving, desire, attachment, and ultimately get to enlightenment. So that's why he was teaching it. Because when you look at his teachings very closely, and he talks about the different groups of people that you might decide to practice generosity with, he puts himself as last. He says basically you should take care of yourself, your relatives, the people around you, your employees, people like this, your children. When those people are taken care of, he kind of gives these other groups of people. And then eventually the 4th group of people that he gets to is himself. And he says, hey, essentially if you're able to help support the continued sharing of the teachings, then you could make offerings to an ordained practitioner or to someone like that. So whenever you're learning about generosity, sometimes depending on what your experience has been like with a collection of teachings like this, you might think, oh, this person's trying to enrich themselves. But keep in mind that the Buddha was already rich and he was already wealthy during his lifetime. And then here in Thailand, they take this stuff very seriously, where in some countries, if you're sharing teachings like this and you're enriching themselves, so what? People don't care. You can have someone that's worth multiple millions of dollars flying around in private airplanes and things like this who are sharing teachings like these kinds of things. But here in Thailand, they know that any offerings that are being made to a particular teacher, that some of those offerings should be coming back to the students, that the teacher should be using a certain amount of those offerings in order to support their life, but then you should see this benefit coming back to you. Here in Thailand, there was a story about, it was 2016 timeframe that I remember it, that this individual was a monk. They were ordained. They were enriching themselves. They were having like Gucci sunglasses, a Fendi bag. They had private chartered airplane and things like this. The Thai government put out an arrest warrant for him because they said he was practicing fraud. He was fraudulent. And then he ended up leaving and going to America, and he started going to temples in America. They put out an Interpol warrant, and they had the American police arrest him in America, and then they extradited him back to Thailand. And then when he got here, he went through the court system. He was found guilty of fraud, and he was sentenced to 20 years in prison because he was using the money from the temple to enrich himself. So Thai people take this very seriously. If they see something like this that's happening, they will take care of it and address it. So you can be sure that when you're making decisions to practice generosity, to be sure that you're practicing with virtuous practitioners. And you're going to see that here in a moment with the words of the Buddha. So here's a little diagram to help you understand that there's this practice of generosity, which you're going to need to develop in order to eliminate any selfishness in the mind so you can give and share without any expectation of anything in return. But then you ask yourself, was this an offering to a teacher to support the continued sharing of the Buddha's teachings, helping others to attain enlightenment? If the answer is no, you're experiencing benefit, right? So by you taking your mom to dinner, by you helping that stranger on the street or that person you don't know on the street, by you helping at an orphanage or a homeless shelter or a women's abuse shelter, sharing your time and effort, energy and resources, it's benefiting you. You're experiencing the elimination of craving, desire, attachment in your own mind because you're practicing generosity, and you're also generating wholesome results or wholesome Kamma towards the development of eliminating selfishness and helping you get closer to enlightenment. But if you're practicing generosity, which is this giving and sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources without any expectation of anything in return, and yes, it is to support the continued sharing of the teachings of the Buddha, you're still eliminating craving, desire, attachment in your mind, but you're also helping others gain access to the teachings of the Buddha so that they can continue to be shared with all beings. And then you're also generating wholesome Kamma so that you can now get closer and closer to enlightenment through eliminating selfish desires and sensual desire. This is what we refer to as merit, because it's helping others to also experience the benefit of learning and practicing the teachings. So here's some words of the Buddha where he's teaching about the different types of people that you might decide to make offerings to in order to produce merit. He says, this is titled An Unsurpassed Field of Merit for the World. He says, monks, these 8 people or persons are worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of reverential salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. What 8? The stream enterer, the one practicing for the realization of the fruit of stream entry, the once returner, the one practicing for the realization of the fruit of once returning, the non-returner, the one practicing for the realization of the fruit of non-returning, the arahant, the one practicing for the realization of arahantship. These 8 persons, monks, are worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of reverential salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. Okay, so I'm going to pause here for a moment. What he's talking about here is someone who's in one of the 4 stages of enlightenment. If you think back to Monday, when I was teaching you the 4 stages of enlightenment, these are those 4 stages. Stream entry is the first stage of enlightenment. The once returner is the second stage. Non-returner is the third stage. And your mind is actually enlightened when you get to the 4th stage. This is called an arahant, where you fully purified your mind. So he's saying anybody who's in one of those 4 stages, or anybody who's on their way to practicing this, these are the 8 people. He's saying, okay, support these people. And you can see this in his teachings, and there's other places where he talks about this as virtuous practitioners in kind of a more general way. Okay, so now he says the 4 practicing the way, the 4 established in the fruit. This is the upright community, composed in wisdom, in virtuous behavior or moral conduct. So during the lifetime of the Buddha, there were many different people who were teaching, and they were claiming that it was their teachings that led to enlightenment. You might think that when a Buddha is in the world, everybody would know that the Buddha is in the world, and then people would rush to go learn with that person. But that's not actually the way that a Buddha operates, that not everybody knows who a Buddha is during the lifetime of a Buddha. So there were other people that were claiming that it was their teachings that was actually leading to enlightenment. But the Buddha knew it was his teachings because he did it by himself. He knew that his mind was fully purified, and he was able to share the teachings readily to help people get to enlightenment. But there were other people that were still teaching, and there were people that were making offerings to those teachers and to those students. But the Buddha knew it was his community that was practicing the way that led to enlightenment. So that's why he refers to it as the upright community, those that are composed in wisdom and virtuous behavior. For people intent on sacrifice, for living beings seeking merit, making merit that ripens in the acquisitions, what is given to the community bears great fruit. What he's saying here when he's saying making merit that ripens in the acquisitions is you getting to enlightenment. That if you're coming in contact with somebody in one of the 4 stages of enlightenment or practicing for the realization of that, by you coming in contact with them to make an offering, you have an opportunity to learn and grow and develop and ask questions. So it develops you into becoming more and more wise, because you're, first of all, would need to have the wisdom to be able to figure out if somebody's in one of the 4 stages of enlightenment. And then having been able to cultivate that amount of wisdom, now you can come in contact with people and ask them questions and gain wisdom that's going to help you. So that's what he's sharing here when he says ripens in the acquisitions. When he says what is given to the community bears great fruit, this is what I was talking about earlier, that whatever offering is being made to a teacher, you should see things coming back to the community. This is the Kamma, that a teacher should be practicing generosity to share their teachings without any expectation of anything in return. And then if students are choosing to practice generosity, that student or that teacher would use a little bit of those resources to sustain their life, but then they would also be sharing back with the students by having classes and courses, retreats, having a nice facility to be able to learn in, meditation cushions, soap and shampoo or water or, toilet paper, things like this. You should see things that are available so that the community can come and learn. So that's what the Buddha is saying, is it bears great fruit, that when somebody's supporting a community of virtuous practitioners, now this is creating an environment in which people can come and learn and grow and develop. You can think about a temple like the womb of a woman. The womb of a woman is the very best place for a human being to grow and develop, for a fetus to become into existence. So this womb of the temple is created by all the different people around. So this particular temple at one time was just raw land, and it was owned by Thai people. And at some point, somebody said, here, I'm going to donate my land in order to help it become a temple. And then slowly but surely, over many hundreds of years, people have put together resources and created this temple here. This temple is over 500 years old. So this building that you're in, the land that you're on, the air conditioning that you see, the projector that you see, everything that you see around you, this microphone, this chair, it was all donated by somebody. At one time, we didn't have air conditioning here. We used to sweat when we were meditating. We'd have the sweat rolling down our body. At one time, I had this old projector you could barely see on the screen, but somebody was like, hey, I would like to buy this projector and allow other students to be able to learn and grow and develop. So slowly but surely, everything you see around you was a donation at some point by somebody to be able to help share the teachings of the Buddha. Okay, so here the Buddha is explaining this, that it bears great fruit when we practice generosity towards the community. So what merit is it's a practice of generosity that helps a practitioner to eliminate craving, desire, attachment, which is the cause of discontentedness and the cause of rebirth. The words of the Buddha, he talks about practicing generosity, that it eliminates the stain of selfishness. These are the words that he uses. And then as you're growing and developing on the path to enlightenment, you'll eventually get to a point where you eliminate your doubt. Right now, you might have doubt about whether the teachings of the Buddha lead to enlightenment or not. or whether this Buddha even existed or any of these other kind of things. But when you learn the teachings close enough and you practice them close enough and you see enough improvement to the condition of your mind, you'll get to a point where you've eliminated your doubt. And someone might decide they would like to help other people to experience that same improvement to the condition of their mind through supporting the teachings to be shared in the world. Sometimes there's a misunderstanding in some communities about merit. They think that you can transfer your merit to somebody else. If you go to make an offering at a temple, if you offer it to an ordained practitioner, sometimes they'll have you get this little urn of water, and then there's this little tiny bowl, and while you're pouring out this water, they'll be chanting. And this will be after you have given your gift. And their thought is that whatever benefit you created by offering this gift, that you're now transferring it to your dead relatives. It's a wonderful thought, but it's actually not true. It's not possible. Because if you understand the benefits of generosity and producing merit, the benefit is it's improving the condition of your mind. It's helping you eliminate craving, desire, attachment, and you're making the teachings available for other people. So it's not like dad or mom can do all kinds of unwholesome things during their life and then they die, and then their children do a bunch of good things for them and transfer the benefits of that to them. It's just not possible. So you'll see this misunderstanding in the world. Here in Thailand, it's referred to as Guat Nam. And if you go on the tour tomorrow, you'll probably see a place where they're doing this, and I'll kind of point it out to you and show you, because there's lots of misunderstandings in the various temples. You'll see rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship, all things that the Buddha didn't teach. And around this idea of merit, this teaching of merit, you'll oftentimes see misunderstandings that people think they can transfer their benefits to somebody else. But if you understand what the Buddha taught on the natural law of Kamma, that you are the owner and the heir of your Kamma, whatever you do, wholesome or unwholesome, you will experience that, then you understand that you can't transfer those benefits to somebody else. Okay? Here's some words of the Buddha where he talks about when you're making an offering, how to be sure that you purify the offering. He talks about these 3 factors for the donor and 3 factors for the recipient. He shares that when you're making an offering or before you make an offering, the donor's mind should be joyful before you give, that you should have joy before you give. And then while you're giving, your mind should be calm and confident in the act of giving. And then after you make your offering, your mind should still be joyful. Here he's using the pronoun she because he was talking to a female student. This female student asked them a question, like, how do you make sure your offering is purified? And he said, oh, this is how you should do it. So he was addressing a female, so that's why he used the word she, but this applies to everybody. He's teaching the natural law of Kamma, of cause and effect, that if your mind is joyful before giving and after giving, and you're calm and confident while you're giving, that means you've put some thought behind your offering. Whereas if you just haphazardly put something together and then kind of shaking and hurrying up to make an offering, and then afterwards, maybe you have remorse. You're like, oh, I gave too much. Why did I give so much? I shouldn't have given so much. Now I'm not going to have what I need for my life. Or maybe you get to the end of your offering and you're like, oh, I should have gave more. I'm so stingy. I'm so selfish. Why didn't I share more? So what the Buddha is teaching you to do is put some thought into any type of offering that you might make and be joyful before and afterwards so you don't have any kind of remorse. And then when you're making your offering, be calm and confident, right? This will help protect your mind. And then there's these 3 factors that he shares that as you're finding somebody that you might decide to practice generosity with or to produce merit with, he says, look for individuals that are free of craving or practicing for the removal of craving, free of anger or practicing for the removal of anger, free of ignorance or a knowing of true reality or practicing for the removal of that. So if someone's free of craving, anger, and ignorance, their mind is enlightened. Or they might be in the journey and they're still practicing, but they're dedicated to eliminating craving, anger, and ignorance. So you can see individuals in the world who might be sharing teachings, either as an ordained practitioner or household practitioner that is practicing very closely, or maybe not practicing closely. The Buddha gives you guidance because it's probably challenging for you to figure out whether somebody's enlightened or not. But the very simple guidance that he gives is that you look at the quality of someone's mind, that if their mind is focused and concentrated and clear, you'll be able to see that in the way that they speak, in the way they communicate, the way that they share their teachings. They'll be confident, they'll be clear and direct and concise and precise with their teachings. But if someone's mind is muddled, this is what the word that the Buddha uses, muddle-mindedness. This is because the mind's polluted. And with the pollutions of craving, anger, and ignorance, the mind will be muddled, right? So it'll be difficult to remember the teachings. You'll stumble over your words. You'll have difficulties communicating the teachings. So an individual who's trained their mind very closely will be able to speak very clear, very direct, very calmly. They'll be able to answer your questions, expounding on the answers to your questions. And this is because they've deeply practiced the teachings and they purified their mind. But you can also see other people who are maybe not that you look down on these people or you judge these people, but you could see ordained practitioners or teachers who are smoking cigarettes or gambling or hitting animals or things like this. This is all things that I've seen. I've even talked with monks who are drunk and intoxicated before. This is a thing that can occur, right? Because not every single teacher, not every single ordained practitioner is practicing closely. So if you practice generosity to produce merit with someone who's gambling or smoking cigarettes or using drugs and intoxicants, you're supporting that kind of activity. So you would like to be sure that when you're making an offering to someone that you know the person a little bit, and that way you know that this offering is going to support that person to continue to deepen their practice, but also helping other people to be able to learn and practice the teachings. That would produce the highest quality of merit. There's something called the way of practice that is helpful for you to understand, because everything that you've been learning about the Eightfold Path and the 5 precepts and meditation training and all these kinds of things, there's a lot of detail that you need to learn and grow and develop and understand. But you might be curious of how do you boil it down to something very simple that you can learn and do on a day-to-day basis? And this is what's referred to as the way of practice. That this is what the Buddha gives you as what you should be doing on a day-to-day basis, is practicing generosity, improving your moral conduct, and practicing meditation. These are the 3 things that you would like to be doing daily, is practicing generosity, improving your moral conduct, and practicing meditation. This is all part of the Eightfold Path. So generosity and practicing that is just like with meditation. I don't know if Siddharth talked to you guys about this on Tuesday afternoon, but I usually teach this when I teach meditation. I explain to you that frequency of your meditation is more important than the duration. So if it was a matter of 1 meditation for 30 minutes or 2 meditations for 15, I would suggest you go for the 2 meditations for 15, because this is going to produce more benefits than the 1 for 30 minutes. And generosity is the same way. That frequency is more important than the amount. So let's just say it was a matter of you sharing 2 hours of your time once every 6 months, or sharing, 30 seconds to do generous acts every single day for the next 6 months, right? That's actually going to be more beneficial for you because your mind's having to let go more frequently. Or say it was a matter of making a financial offering where you're maybe donating $300 every 6 months versus $1 every day, right? This is actually going to be more helpful because your mind's frequently having to let go, let go, let go, let go, let go. So you would like to have frequency of your generosity, whether it's your time, your effort, your energy, your resources. Be frequently practicing generosity daily. That's what the Buddha is teaching you, is generosity, improving your moral conduct. This is how you speak, how you act, your livelihood, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood. This is all going to help you improve your moral conduct, because as long as you're putting out harm, that harm is coming back to you. So in terms of getting to enlightenment, you would like to improve your moral conduct on a day-to-day basis. And then what's supporting all of this is the meditation. That's what you're doing on a daily basis. So this is how you're supporting your development as a human being on your journey to enlightenment. All the details are needed, like the Eightfold Path, but this is kind of the high-level 3 things that you're doing on a consistent, ongoing basis every day to get to enlightenment. Oops. Here's some more words of the Buddha. Something that was very helpful for me as I was studying the teachings of the Buddha. So I'll share it with you guys too. It's titled, "If Beings Knew the Results of Giving and Sharing." Monks, if beings knew, as I know, the results of giving and sharing, they would not eat without having given, nor would the stain of selfishness obsess them and take root in their minds. Even if it were their last bite, their last mouthful, they would not eat without having shared it. If, there were someone to share it with. But because beings do not know, as I know, the results of giving and sharing, they eat without having given, and the stain of selfishness obsesses them and takes root in their minds. What he's talking about here about the results of giving and sharing that people don't know, that he knows, is the peacefulness and joy of the enlightened mind. What he's sharing is that if people knew that it's generosity that leads to this peace and this joy, and you needed to practice it to a certain degree in order to be able to liberate your mind and get to enlightenment, they would not eat without having shared it. So this is a very helpful thing for you guys to practice. Like when you're eating, you can share your food with other people. Like say you're with a group of friends and you get a bag of potato chips, you pop open the bag of potato chips. Hey, would you like some potato chips? And you pass it around, right? And if a bag comes back and there's only one potato chip left, okay, just eat your one potato chip and go get another bag, right? You can do these kinds of things. This will help you. Like in Asian countries and Asian culture, when we sit down to eat, it's typically food goes in the middle and everybody shares, right? But in Western culture, we tend to hoard our food onto our plate. And this oftentimes promotes craving. It's like an animal, right? Like my food, my food, my food. We become very selfish. But if we live open-handedly, we can eliminate this stain of selfishness that the Buddha is talking about here. Even if it's your last bite, you would be willing to share it if you knew that sharing leads to this peace and joy. But you don't know what this peace and joy is like in the enlightened mental state, so people do become selfish. But here the Buddha is helping you to understand that this peace and joy is so impactful that you would not eat without having shared it if there was someone to share it with. So you can train your mind on a daily basis to be sharing and practicing generosity. Some more words of the Buddha here. He's talking about the benefits of giving. Here he says, monks, there are these 5 benefits of giving. What 5? One is dear and agreeable to many. Wholesome persons go in large numbers to you or to one. One acquires a wholesome reputation. One is not deficient in householders' duties. With the breakup of the body after death, one is reborn in a good destination, in a heavenly world. These are the 5 benefits of giving. By giving, one becomes dear. One follows the duty of the wholesome. The wholesome, mentally disciplined monks always go in large numbers to you. They teach one the teachings that dispels all discontentedness, having understood which, the taintless one here attains nibbana, or enlightenment. So these 5 benefits here that he's talking about, they're all pretty straightforward, but I'd like to focus in on the last one, number 5, because whenever you're seeing the Buddha teach, he's teaching you what's leading to your enlightenment. And if anything ever, if you fall short of enlightenment for any reason, then the same things that lead to enlightenment are the same things that lead to a rebirth in the heavenly world. The goal is not to be reborn in heaven. That's not the goal of the teachings of the Buddha. The goal is to get to enlightenment in this life. But as you're putting together all these teachings, if you fall short of that for any reason, there's the potential to be reborn in the heavenly world. He's not sharing with you that you should aspire to be reborn in the heavenly world. He's just helping you to understand, like, hey, this practice of generosity, it leads to all these different benefits. He's helping you to see the cause and effect. So he's not dangling a carrot and say, hey, practice all this generosity and give me all this money so that you can get to heaven. He's saying, hey, if you practice generosity, these are the benefits. He's just showing you the cause and effect. He wasn't trying to convince you to do anything or force you to do anything. He's just showing you the cause and effect. But ultimately, the ultimate goal is to get to enlightenment. But whenever you see him teaching about, hey, this leads to rebirth in the heavenly world, he's just helping you to see that if you fall short of enlightenment for any reason, there's the potential to go to this heavenly world. But it's not permanent. The heavenly existence, you're still in the cycle of rebirth, and you still need to get out of the cycle of rebirth. As you can see, nothing around you is permanent. This existence in the heavenly realm is not permanent either. Once you're there, you still need to get to enlightenment, or else you can go down into these other realms. The human realm is the ideal existence because we experience pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. So we tend to have built-in motivation to be interested to get to enlightenment. Where in the heavenly world, they only experience pleasant feelings, so they tend to lack motivation and encouragement and enthusiasm to be able to get to enlightenment. So those painful feelings you experience, you can kind of harness that as helping you to motivate you to be able to get to enlightenment, to escape those. So this is what he's teaching here is the benefits. Then here's a teaching titled, Gifts of the Teachings is Superior than Gifts of Material Things. Monks, there are these two kinds of gifts, a gift of material things and a gift of the teachings. Of these two kinds of gifts, this is supreme, a gift of the teachings. There are these two kinds of sharing, sharing of material things and sharing of the teachings. Of these two kinds of sharing, this is supreme, sharing of the teachings. There are these two kinds of assistance, assistance with material things and assistance with the teachings. Of these two kinds of assistance, this is supreme, assistance with the teachings. So what he's sharing here is that you could go out and get all these material things for people, but that pales in comparison to sharing the teachings with other people. This is one of the reasons why I choose to share the teachings and dedicate the rest of my life to doing so, because I know it's the very best thing that I could do with my life is to help people to be able to get to enlightenment, because getting to that peace and joy, your life will be wonderful. Your mind will be at ease. So it's the very best thing that I could ever do for my life. So when you're practicing generosity to produce merit, you're actually creating the opportunity for other people to learn the teachings. You're sharing the teachings. Because if you could press this button and your parents and your brothers and siblings and your life partner and your children would stay angry, bitter, and harsh and sad and frustrated and feeling boredom and loneliness and resentfulness the rest of their life, or you could press this button and they would be peaceful and joyful for the rest of their life, which button would you press? It's a no-brainer, right? You would press this one. Well, it's not pressing a button. We can't press a button for other people to help them get to peace and joy. But what we can do is we can support the teachings and help other people to have access to them. So for 2,500 years from the life of the Buddha, there's been people gradually practicing generosity to the point where the teachings are now reaching you. Nobody forced people to do it. Nobody controlled anybody to do it. It's just that people chose to practice generosity. For 2,500 years, they've been practicing this generosity. And now here the teachings are, you're able to learn them. What some people refer to this as today is they call it pay it forward. I don't know if you've ever heard that terminology. This is terminology that people talk about. Like if you're benefiting from something now that somebody else created an opportunity for you, then you kind of like pay it forward to help other people to benefit from that too. So the Buddha started this 2,500 years ago of this act of generosity, which is helping you get to enlightenment, but also helps to share the teachings with other people. And then this is the last thing I'll share with you guys on this topic, and then I'll open up to questions. This is where the Buddha is talking about this mutual support between teachers and ordained practitioners and the students. It's titled Mutual Support Between Monks, Brahmins, and Householders. What a Brahmin is nowadays we would probably refer to this person as a Hindu priest, that during the lifetime of the Buddha, the society was a class system, that there was this 15% of society that if you were born into this family, they considered you to be a holy person. And now if you were born into this family, you were doing rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship. And the common people were taught that you can't improve your life. It's not possible for you to improve your life. You have to go to these people, and these people are going to do rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship and prayer on your behalf, and then your life was supposed to become better. Well, the Buddha knew that this wasn't true. He understood the natural law of Kamma, that when you gain wisdom and you make wiser decisions, your life will improve. So he was teaching people these kinds of things. But the Brahmin were still doing their rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship. People were paying them money for these things, and it bred corruption. Because today somebody would show up and it was like, hey, I would like you to do this ceremony. And the Brahmin would be like, all right, $5, right? And then tomorrow they would come and how much is it? Oh, $10. Well, why? Oh, because I said so. And you can't do anything about it because you wouldn't be able to improve your life the way that people thought. So the Buddha knew that this was corruption. He knew that it wasn't leading people to improvements in their life. So he was teaching the natural law of Kamma and cultivating wisdom. So these Brahmin would oftentimes come to the Buddha in order to learn and grow and develop and learn his teachings. Even though they were doing rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, they were still learning his teachings to a certain degree in some cases. So the Buddha here is saying monks, Brahmin and householders, right? These Hindu priests and household practitioners are very helpful to you. They provide you with the requisites of robes, alms food, lodgings, and medicine in time of sickness, And you monks are very helpful to Brahmins and householders as you teach them the teachings that are good in the beginning, the middle, and the end, with the correct meaning and wording. And you proclaim the spiritual life in its fulfillment, in complete purity. Thus, monks, this spiritual life is lived with mutual support for the purpose of crossing the flood and making a complete end of discontentedness. So he's talking about this mutual support between teachers and students, that by teachers choosing to share the teachings without any expectation of anything in return, and then students potentially choosing to do that as well. Now there's this mutual support between the two groups of people. Because the way that the Buddha taught is when you're sharing the teachings, he taught to let go of your worldly life. That, if I had a career, for example, like if I was running a business on the side, I would be involved in that. I wouldn't have time to come here, meet with you guys, spend time with you, dedicate to creating a nice center and developing teaching materials and books and all these different things. So, teachers have oftentimes let go of their worldly life, and now they're just sharing the teachings. And there's this mutual support that happens between the students and the teachers. And I would just like to let you guys know that if you would ever like to support me, you're welcome to, but I don't have any expectation of anything in return from the students that learn with me. I'm here to share the teachings with you and help you to grow. And while this is part of the teachings of the Buddha, and students do sometimes choose to support me, I don't have an expectation of that. I'm interested in just helping the students to learn and grow and develop. And by choosing to do so, people sometimes do choose to practice generosity. So if you've chosen to do that, I would like to thank you for your generosity, whether you're sweeping the floor and cleaning the bathroom, or maybe sharing a financial donation. Or there's some students who help me with online stuff like editing podcasts and things like this. People share their time, effort, energy, and resources with the community because it bears great fruit. Because by students sharing their time, effort, energy, and resources, it comes back to the community to support you guys in learning and growing and developing. So thank you to anybody who's chosen to support me over the time that you've been spending time with me. And if you ever choose to do that in the future, just know that I have a deep amount of appreciation and gratitude for that. But also know that there's never an expectation that somebody would do that. Because if I put a price on my classes and courses and retreats, right away, people who are disadvantaged wouldn't be able to access these teachings. And those are the people that are struggling the most, right? If they're struggling with finances and they're struggling with difficulties in their life, it's because they lack wisdom with the natural law of Kamma. And as soon as you put a price tag of $1,000 for a week training, those people can't access it, right? So by me keeping my teachings completely at no cost, then anybody and everybody who has the ability to come learn can come learn. And now they're available to anybody and everybody that would like to receive them. So in this way, there's people like in small African villages in Africa that learn the teachings with me. They download the books for free. They ask me questions online. They attend the live streams, things like this. They maybe themselves only make about $50 a month. They're living on like $50 a month. They'll never, ever send me any kind of donation of money whatsoever, and they don't need to, but they're able to learn and grow and develop. And maybe they're practicing generosity in their community where they're sharing with their friends and their family and their neighbors and things like this. So by people that support me, I'm able to then be able to share teachings with everybody and anybody without any expectation of anything in return. So this is the mutual support that the Buddha describes, and he taught us to not charge for the things that we do, because that way the teachings can be available for everybody and anybody. Okay, so I think this is the last thing. Yep. Any questions on what is merit? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, on comment. Can you use the mic because we have people online joining us? Hear the dogs being discontent with the impermanence? The dogs don't like that impermanence, right? They're craving for it to be quiet. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's not about merit.
Okay.
It's about Kamma.
Sure.
And, just remembered. I just remember a question. When I harvest a tree.
I'm having trouble hearing you.
If I harvest a tree.
If I harvest a tree.
Yeah, a nice oak, for example, in Germany. Mm-hmm. This oak has a lot of other living beings, because ants and whatever live from this tree. I think an oak can have around millions of other living beings. millions of maybe different living beings. I don't know. I'm doing harm for I harm them if I cut the tree. What's about that? Because I know it, right? I know now. Okay, if I cut this tree, millions of living beings will die or will have no home. What's about that? What do you think about that?
Okay, so remember, it's craving, anger, and ignorance that is going to produce unwholesome Kamma. And that first precept that the Buddha teaches about living compassionately for the welfare of all living beings, in order for Kamma to be created, there has to be intention behind it. So what he's teaching you in that first precept of living compassionately for the welfare of all living beings, it's helping you to not cause harm to other beings, and then harm won't come back to you. And what it's also doing is it's helping you eliminate craving and anger and ignorance, that in order to kill a living being, there needs to be the intention to kill it. And because of that, there's a certain amount of craving and anger and ignorance in the mind to be able to kill another living being. So it's all about your intention. So if you went out to a plant or a tree, like say you're harvesting a broccoli and you're walking down the street and you're walking through the field and you step on an ant and kill it, there's no unwholesome Kamma that's going to come to you because of that, because there wasn't the intention to kill behind it. In order to produce unwholesome Kamma, there needs to be craving, anger, and ignorance that is making the decision. So when you're just walking down the street or you're just harvesting a tree, you don't have craving, anger, and ignorance to be able to kill these beings. Your choice, your intention is to harvest this tree. And as a result of the Kamma of the animals being in the animal world, these ants that are maybe laying on the ground and the tree falls over and kills them, this is a result of being in the animal world, that those beings are struggling and having lots of difficulties being in the animal realm, and eventually they will be reborn into the human realm with an opportunity to get to enlightenment. And they may have even experienced that in the past where they were human and then they ended up back in the animal realm. But these animals are going to experience this kind of thing as a result of being an animal, and that's their Kamma. But in order for you to experience unwholesome Kamma in that situation, there would have to be craving, anger, and ignorance that is generating that decision with the intention of killing. And now there's a certain amount of craving, anger, and ignorance in your mind, and that's going to affect you in an unwholesome way and produce unwholesome Kamma. But just cutting down and harvesting a tree or a broccoli or cauliflower or something like this, it's not producing unwholesome Kamma because your intention is to harvest the plant.
Yeah, I understand. Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I would walk in the forest, if I would work in the forest,
mm-hmm.
And would cut thousands of trees, I know that I might kill a lot of animals with this choices. But I don't do it because I want to harm them. So I have no trouble, or I understand.
Right. There's no intention there to kill the animals. That's not your intention. You're going out into, the world, into the forest to harvest the tree. We kill living beings probably every day, just about, right? Just walking down the street, there's going to be an ant or a spider or something under your foot that you don't even know is there. And that's why you're not experiencing unwholesome results coming back from that, because there's no intention to kill. Whereas if you walk down the street and you were like stomping your feet and looking for ants to kill, and you see the pigeons and you're trying to kill them, this is going to produce unwholesome results for you, because people around you are going to see what you're doing. You're going to be like, whoa, what's going on with this guy, right? It's going to produce all kinds of unwholesome Kamma because your intention to kill is there. But when you're just walking down the street, there's no intention to kill. So that's why it's not producing any unwholesome Kamma for you.
I think I mentioned it in another class, but in the one monastery I visited, when I cleaned the bathrooms, there were a lot of ants. Mm-hmm. So we sweep them out, right? Mm-hmm. But some of them we can't sweep out, or it's difficult. It takes time, and then sometimes you think, "Oh, come on, it takes too much time. Let's through this few ants, whatever. I just put the water there, and they will die." But there was no hatred for these ants, right? Mm-hmm. So what's about that? Is it then, but still bad Kamma because I could do it different, right? It take me maybe 10 minutes more, or 5 to sweep them out. But
yeah, so if there's a craving to hurry up now I'm going to kill because I'm trying to hurry up, right? If I would have just taken 10 extra minutes, I could have swept up these ants. That's what I would have done in that situation. Because we have if you live in Thailand, you're going to have ants in your building at some point, right? So at our house, we'll occasionally have ants. You'll see the trail coming in, and I just get a broom and I just sweep them up and just kind of relocate them somewhere else. And in the process of sweeping them up, probably some of them die, right? Because their body isn't so strong. I'm just lightly sweeping them, but they potentially could die. But my intention here is to relocate them to somewhere else. And this is where the loving kindness and the compassion is coming from. So you would like to strike the middle way. There's actually a practice, I don't know if you're familiar with this, it's called Jainism, where when they walk down the street, they literally carry a broom with them, and they will sweep in front of them to be sure they're not killing any animals. This is like to the extreme, right? But then the other side of that is just to like not even care and just plow through the world. That's the other side. You would like to strike this middle where, I'm about to clean the bathroom. There's this bunch of ants. Let me just take some time to sweep up as many of them as I can see, as many as them that I'm able to. This is arising loving kindness and compassion in that situation. And now you do that, and now you clean. But of course, there's probably going to be 1 or 2 or 3 ants here or there that you don't notice and that you don't sweep up, and now they end up dying as a result. But in the process, you've practiced loving kindness and compassion in this situation. So keep in mind that the Buddha is not saying preserve all life at all costs, right? That's not what he's saying. When he teaches the first precept, it's not preserve all life at all costs. It's live compassionately for the welfare of all living beings. Because there was a situation where we had termites in our house and we had to do something about it. Well, first thing we did was try to research and see, can we eradicate termites without killing them? And the answer we came back with was no. You can't, essentially, right? So we needed to hire somebody. My wife hired somebody to come, and they drilled holes around the house, and they put food down there that was poisonous food, and they ate it, and then they took it back to their nest, and then they all died. Because if we allowed the termites to eat our home, that wouldn't be living compassionately for the welfare of all living beings, because we wouldn't have a home to live in. But this harm that the termites are causing by eating our home, now the harm is coming to them. And this is the problem of being in the animal world, that in the animal world, they lack the consciousness to be able to make the conscious choice of, I would like to eat a tree. Let me go out into the woods where nobody is going to be there. Nobody's going to be concerned about it, and I can eat this tree. Because as a human being, we have the consciousness to be able to do that. But as an animal, the termites don't understand that. They don't have that level of consciousness to realize this is a house that is owned by people, and we shouldn't eat that. We should eat this over here out in the forest. So now this harm that those termites were causing, this harm ended up coming to them. And maybe someday they'll invent a way to eradicate termites without killing them, but for right now, we don't have that. So this is the harm that's coming to those beings as a result. So what the Buddha teaches is to avoid repeated killing, where you're repeatedly killing a being, because there it's not just like, oh, we have termites, we have to get rid of it, how do we live compassionately for all living beings? It's like, instead you're repeatedly killing and intentionally killing. This is what's going to lead to unwholesome results. Because like in another situation, when I was younger, when I was like 17, 18 years old, I worked on a farm, and we used to kill sheep and goats. Because people would come and purchase them, and we had to go catch them. We had to slit their throats. We had to hang them upside down and drain out the blood. Then we had to skin them. Then we had to use a saw and cut up their meat and package it for these people. And in that situation, I was intentionally killing. I was repeatedly killing. And I experienced the results of that, because at that workplace, it was very hostile. We would get in fights all the time. It was like a horse farm. They had cows and goats and stuff. We would go into the horse stalls and fight it out and beat each other up and stuff like this. We had all kinds of issues at this kind of place. And that was the results of our decisions. And then later in life, I was very worried about people killing me, because I had killed so much as a growing up. So I experienced the Kamma. I couldn't run and hide from all that killing that I had done. So when you're repeatedly killing like this, you're going to experience unwholesome Kamma. But the Kamma related to killing the termites, there was no unwholesome Kamma there, because we were just defending this building and living compassionately for the welfare of all living beings. I didn't experience any unwholesomeness as a result of that. Where the repeated killing of the goats and sheep, I experienced that because that was based in craving and ignorance. I didn't have any anger, but there's a certain amount of ill will involved in taking another being and killing it. Right. So you can see here very clearly, the more you see these kinds of examples, what the natural law of Kamma is, that it's not about preserve all life at all costs. It's about understanding the decisions you're making and how they're impacting other beings.
Yeah. What's about, like, has a human being maybe more, that's the wrong word I think, but more right to live than the termite? Because termites have the chance to get to another better realm then, because you have one life and there are millions of or thousands of termites, which...
Your mic went out. I understand your question, though. Was there more, though? Yeah. So I don't think of it as a human being has a more right to live than an animal. I don't think of it that way. All these beings in all the realms, I think of them as equal. Even though we call it lower realms and higher realms, they're all equal in my eyes. We're all living beings, or we're all beings, right? These termites that were affecting our home and destroying it, we had to take care of that, and that was the way to do that. If a human being was breaking into our house and doing something harmful to our home or the people in the home, we would have had to take care of that too. And I would try to do the least amount of harm as possible. Even with the termites, we tried to do the least amount of harm as possible. They advised us to have this food there for 2 years. And we only did it for 1 year because we were trying to, just try to take care of it a little bit, but they ended up coming back because we only had it for 1 year. So then after like 3, 4, 5, 6 months, they came back. So then we had to do it again in order to fully eradicate them. So it's the same thing that if a human being was coming to my home and destroying it or destroying the people in there, I would try to take care of the situation in the wisest way possible and cause the least amount of harm as possible. That's the best way to handle any situation. So it's unwise to think of humans and animals as being unequal and that humans have more right to live than animals, because that puts us in a position where we're higher. And now that's the mind's ego, the conceit, putting yourself up, where you would like to think of yourself as being equal to all beings.
I think I just thought, maybe why not giving the termites the house and buying a new one?
I can afford to do that? It's not possible, right? It's not possible for us to move out of the house and just let the termites have the house. It's not possible. Our life savings is invested in that house. We wouldn't have a place to live. If it's not that house, we have nowhere else to live. And it's not living compassionately for the living beings who we are, right? Just like if a human being broke in the window and started to attack us and light our house on fire, we're going to try to stop this harm from occurring. We're not just going to give them the house, right? If we can leave, then we can leave. But in the situation of termites, they're just going to take over the whole house. A human being coming into the house and maybe trying to destroy it, okay, I can get out and call the police and let them deal with it because there's only so much harm that they can do. But termites, they would have destroyed the whole home. We wouldn't have a place to live. And that wouldn't be a very wise decision.
So they had to die. Somebody came and killed them. Is their karma now worse? Does this have an effect on their karma? Like they will be in the hell realm, or they will be in the heaven realm, or if they would live longer and would eat your house and you would move out, would they have a different karma? You know about that?
No, the animals, the termites, right? You're talking about the termites. The termites are going to be reborn countless times in the animal realm before they get to a point to be reborn in the human realm. They might have moved from termite into human being, but more likely than not, there's countless rebirths happening in the animal realm before you get a chance to move to the human realm. So their Kamma wouldn't be any different if I just let them eat the house. It's not gonna do that. That would be very unwise to just allow that kind of thing to continue like that. It's kind of like if somebody was coming and fighting you and constantly hitting you, you're not just gonna sit there and let that person hit you. It's the same kind of thing that if termites are coming to your home, you're going to need to take care of this problem. And if you're living compassionately for the welfare of all living beings, you might choose to do what we did, which is research to see if there's a way to eradicate them without killing them. And then understanding that the Buddha is not teaching you to preserve all life at all cost. That's not what he's teaching you. What you were describing, that would be preserve all life at all cost. That's not wise. You need to practice the middle way, right? So that's what we chose to do in this situation. In the food that they put in there, the termites chose to eat that, right? That was a choice that they made. And that's because of their lack of consciousness. As a human being, you wouldn't have ate that food because you have a different level of consciousness. But as an animal, they chose to eat that particular food. Mm-hmm.
And just a small question. Mm-hmm. I just thought about if, for example, you would meet you would go to Canada and you would meet a bear, and the bear has two small childs, and I heard stories that they anxious and attack a human. Mm-hmm. Do you think if you have more wisdom and love and kindness for this animal, they will not attack you? Is there something like this kind of karma you have? Because, or you know what I mean?
Yeah. So it's not like you radiate loving kindness in the world and now the bear can sense that loving kindness and now they're not going to attack you. This is a big misunderstanding. There's monks who have gone out into the forest thinking that they're so enlightened and that they can go out in the forest and a lion or a tiger won't attack them. This is not true. There was a case in India where this traveling monk showed up at a temple and he wanted to go out into the forest, and the local people are like, oh, don't do that. There's tigers out there. They will kill you. And he's like, I got a bunch of loving kindness. And he goes out into the forest and he's meditating. And next thing you know, he was attacked and he was killed. This is because of his unwise decisions, his ego, right? Thinking that I can go out in the forest and a lion's not going to attack me because I'm loving and kind. This isn't the way it works. So you need to make wise decisions. And if I showed up to a local temple and I was like, hey, I'm going to go meditate in the forest. And they're like, no, you shouldn't. There's tigers out there. It's really unwise. I'd be like, you know what? You guys are the local people. You know this area better than me. I'm going to follow your advice, right? I'm not going to go out in the forest with a bunch of ego puffed up thinking that I'm so loving and kind that this tiger isn't going to attack me. That would be really unwise. So that kind of thing is impossible. If you made a decision to go out into the forest and you encountered a bear with their cubs, you would know, back away, right? It's wise to do that. And I used to go hiking a lot when I was younger, and I would be proactive about this because I knew bears were out in the area that I was in. And I would kind of every once in a while, hey bear, I would kind of make myself known so that long before I ever got to, and I wouldn't sneak up on a bear without them knowing it and surprise them, because that's when they're usually attacked because of the impermanence. So I would kind of call out every minute or two as I was walking the trail, particularly if there wasn't very many people on the trail. I would kind of call out and let the animals know that, hey, I was coming through. Where some people tend to be kind of quiet and they walk through the trail and they're kind of looking for wildlife. And my view was, hey, I'm the outsider here. I'm coming into their territory, and I would like to give them the courtesy of saying, hey, I'm coming. And if you would like to know I'm coming, here I am, I'm coming. So then most often than not, they would already have run away before I got there because they would hear me coming. So that's the way I practice, because I wasn't interested in encountering a bear while I was out hiking.
But it's, I think I heard that if you have love and kindness to these animals, mm-hmm. these animals can feel this kind of, no?
It's not true.
Because I heard stories about, I've heard a story about a monk sitting outside in the forest with other monks, and he was doing a meditation or something, and the snake was coming to him in front of him, and he was smiling to the snake and was touching on the head. And the snake then was moving away to the next one.
Yeah, and that person who told that story, or the person who's depicted in this story, people are interested in glorifying that person, making them look so great, and this is the ego and arrogance. This is the thing that's going to lead you down the path of delusion, thinking that I can do some loving kindness meditation and go out in the forest and animals won't attack me. And then this is because of the lack of wisdom, the ignorance, or the unknowing of true reality, making decisions in that way, you're going to get attacked by an animal and end up dying. And that's what's going to produce that you need to be able to see the truth that animals aren't sensing your loving kindness. They're making decisions based on their own craving, anger, and ignorance, right? Because animal's mind is unenlightened, so they're going to make decisions through craving, anger, and ignorance. And their mind doesn't like impermanence, right? So if they're somewhere with their babies or their children and you just happen to show up and they get surprised and shocked by that, typically the response is to attack. That's what the unenlightened mind does. So that's why I used to make myself known as I travel through the forest, because I'm the outsider. This is their land. This is their territory. So you shouldn't believe those things, right? Belief isn't going to lead you to wisdom. It's not true. This is why people get attacked by animals all the time. If animals could sense your loving kindness, then human beings wouldn't necessarily get attacked in those situations, but they do. So you're going to have stories like this that people tell you to make you want to believe this, but it's not true.
But I thought by myself, if I'm nice to a dog, I say, "Hey dog," and use a nice voice, the dog likes that. Mm-hmm. Isn't it maybe the same with animals?
There you're having actions, right? There's certain actions that you're doing, and you're doing it with a domesticated animal, therefore a little bit more enlightened, even though it's not enlightened. A wild animal out in the forest versus a dog that's been domesticated with human beings, its mind is a little bit more awake, a little bit less craving, a little bit less anger, a little bit less ignorance in a domesticated animal. And there your action is that you're showing loving kindness, right? You're having loving kindness towards the animal. So now the animal is experiencing that because you're petting it on its head, right? That's different than going out into the forest with a wild animal that is a bear and you haven't done anything but just shock it when it's there with its cubs. These are two different situations. What you were describing initially was just like loving kindness is emanating from the individual, and somehow the animal's going to sense that and pick that up. That's not the way it works.
Okay. And I met a Meiji, and she told that once she was in a building or something, and a snake was coming to this building, and maybe the door was open. And she, in her mind, she talked to her, "Stop, go away," something. She talked this. That's not true then, right?
This is the ego wanting to think that, wow, I am so powerful that this snake was coming into the building and I used my mind to convince this snake to not come and bite me. This is the ego that's doing that, right? That's thinking like, look how great I am, look what I did. And then of course she had to tell you that story because she wanted that admiration and that respect from you, right? Without craving, desire, attachment. If this was true, then you wouldn't need to actually do those things. So maybe she was sitting in somewhere and a snake was coming and the snake chose on its own to not come towards her, because usually animals are more afraid of us than we are of them. When they see us, they go away from us, right? Or when they hear us, they go away from us. So when people are telling you these kinds of things, particularly if they're putting themselves in the role of, I'm the one who has this great, powerful mind and look what I did, that's just ego coming at you. If you would like to see for yourself, go ahead. I don't advise it, but go ahead in the forest and you can see for yourself. The animals aren't going to heave you whatsoever. You know, they're wild animals, and they have a craving, anger, and ignorance, and they're going to be angry and bitter and hostile and harsh towards you. Get away from our territory. And this is the Kamma. So I don't suggest you believe these kinds of things, and you need to consider that when people are sharing those with you, that they have a craving in their mind for you to give them that admiration and that respect, because their mind is so powerful, and that's their ego trying to get you to admire them. Like, look how powerful my mind is. Look what I can do. And right away, you should be suspicious of those kinds of things.
But it must not be their... Is it their ego, or is it maybe that she really thought that this is possible? Because this kind of story I heard also in different stories.
If somebody's telling you a story of something that they did, and in a situation, they use their mind in order to get this snake to retreat, that's their ego. That's wanting to tell you that. Because there's countless things that an individual can accomplish and an individual can do in their life, but why do you have to go around and brag to other people? Why do you have to be boastful? That's the ego that's doing that. The ego wants to be boastful and arrogant and prideful, and wants other people to look at you and like, wow, look how great I am.
Then she was lying to me, right? And she followed the Buddhist teachings closely, I think. Well, she knows that lying is not a good thing.
I wouldn't say that someone else was lying. That's not my place to say. I wasn't there. I didn't hear the information. And even if I was, it's still not my place to gossip or slander. I wouldn't do that about another human being. But what I'm sharing with you is that when you're in a conversation with somebody, if they're being boastful, if they're being grandiose, if they're saying things like, look at me, look how great I am, look what I do with my mind, this is the ego. And you should be very suspect of that and understand and consider where it's coming from, that it's coming from the ego. And I'm not telling you to look down on this person or to judge this person as good or bad or anything like that. But as soon as you hear those kinds of things, it's coming from the ego, and it's unwise to give any heave or any significance to those kind of stories. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I have a couple other questions.
So let's say a baby or a kid get physically, emotionally, or sexually abused. Mm-hmm. Is it coming from a past life Kamma?
Yeah, this is one of the most challenging things for us to understand in the human realm, is that here's this 3-year-old child getting sexually abused. Like, what did they do in this life to be able to experience this? And this is from their previous life. And it's not punishments. It's just a sequence of events that we don't know what that being has done in their previous lives, but whatever they experienced, they were born into a family that had craving, anger, and ignorance. And usually it's family members that are abusing this child. And unfortunately, this child is experiencing that. And then potentially over time, as the child ages, it can realize what's going on, it can get safe, and then it can train its mind to let this go and not define itself through what happened. Because many of us have experienced physical abuse, mental abuse, sexual abuse, but that doesn't define who we are as a person. Oftentimes the mind clings to those experiences. We even call it trauma. But all that is the mind holding on. And in the present moment, you're thinking about an experience that happened in the past, and now the mind is discontent in the present moment. So there's times where students learn with me that have had these experiences, and I've had these experiences in the past too, as I was growing up. So you can train your mind to let this go and not be affected by it, but that is where it's coming from. It's based on our experiences, that we've done certain things in our past lives, that there was a sequence of events that occurred. It doesn't mean we abused somebody in the past. It doesn't mean that that's what we did, but it's just a sequence of events that because we didn't get to enlightenment in our past life, we were reborn, and we were reborn into a family that lacked wisdom. And here it is, we're experiencing this abuse, and we can overcome that. And it's unfortunate when these things occur, but it is our karma, the results of our decisions.
Result of a Kamma as well? Or?
So when we have things like bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, anxiety, panic attacks, things like this is all being misunderstood right now. It is our Kamma. Everything that we experience, either wholesome or unwholesome, every single thing you experience is Kamma. There's no like chance, there's no good luck or bad luck, there's no destiny or fate. If we resign ourselves to thinking that way, then we're locked in. We can't change our life. So what we're talking about with mental health issues today in modern times, this is a polluted mind. This is just an untrained mind where nowadays people want to think that there's a brain defect and this human being is defective. But in reality, it's not the case, that it's just the mind is untrained. Because growing up, I was diagnosed with a lot of these mental illnesses and conditions, and I was taking all kinds of medicines for a while. But when I trained my mind with the teachings of the Buddha, I eradicated all those symptoms. And I don't take medicine anymore because I don't need to. So we're having wrong view, thinking that the problem is chemistry in our brain, when in reality it's the mind that is untrained. The mind and the brain are two different things. And when you train the mind, there's an effect to the brain. And when you change and tweak the chemicals in the brain, there is an effect to the mind. But you can't clean up the mind through tweaking brain chemistry. But when you're training the mind and you're cleaning up the pollution in the mind, it affects the brain in a positive way. There are scientists now that are researching this, that they're taking long-term meditators and they're testing them in MRIs and CAT scans and things like this that didn't exist during the lifetime of the Buddha. And they're seeing all these physical changes to the brain as a result of training the mind. So what we talk about is depression and bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, bulimia, anorexia, all these different things that are being labeled as mental health issues and mental illness, they can all be eradicated and understood through the teachings of the Buddha. When you understand them through the teachings of the Buddha, you can then eradicate them through training of the mind. So there's students who study with me that are on different medications and been diagnosed with all these different things, and them on their own, seeing the stability in their mind, they're decreasing and or eliminating their medication and completely eradicating the symptoms just like I did. So it's just a misunderstanding. But any kind of experience you're having within your own mind, it is your Kamma. But it's not a being that's controlling what you experience. It's your own decisions. That having not chosen to learn and practice and train your mind, you're now experiencing these difficulties within your mind. It's the cause and effect. The decisions that you make are affecting you in this unwholesome way, or the decision that you're not making to not train your mind is affecting you in this unwholesome way. But then when you start gaining this wisdom, you can now improve what you experience through improved decision making. Yeah, you're welcome. I think you have a question.
I eat meat, and I grew up in a family that ate meat, and it's something that I enjoy eating, and I feel like I don't go out of my way to find vegetarian options sometimes, but now I realize it might not be like the best thing to do. So do you think me eating meat could lead to bad Kamma in the future?
Yeah, you're already experiencing the Kamma of that there's certain sickness or illness, like you might get digestion issues and diarrhea because you're getting bacteria into the body. There's certain hormones and drugs and toxins in that meat that are affecting the body. You're already experiencing it. And you'll experience a shorter lifespan as a result of eating meat. But you can improve that with wisdom and being able to see the truth. You can extinguish that old Kamma by making decisions in the present moment that's producing new Kamma, like we were talking about. So an individual can gradually transition over to a plant-based food supply. They're ingesting less drugs, less hormones, less toxins. They're not eating the flesh anymore, and you'll experience improved health. And this is where you can see the truth for yourself, that you don't need to believe any of these teachings, that as you make changes, you'll be able to see the improvement to the condition of the body and your mind as well. That's how you extinguish your old Kamma, is through arising wisdom about this cause and effect. And that's what will help you to improve the health of the body and the mind. Okay. All right, great questions, guys. I just have a little bit more here for you just to kind of share with you continued support, because this afternoon we have an activity and some things I'm going to be teaching you guys, but then the tours on Friday and the course is kind of coming to a close, and you might be asking yourself like, hey, how can I learn some more beyond this course? So I'll share a little bit with you here on continued support on the path to enlightenment, because you can continue to learn and grow and develop through books, audiobooks, through videos, podcasts, quizzes. It's all available through our website. I have the book series that you can download for free. You can take it and go print it. You can get printed versions here at the temple, or you can order it on Amazon. At the end of each one of those chapters, there's a video of recorded of that particular class. And you can be joining the current classes that are live, and that's fine for you to be able to do. But you can also watch the recordings, which are linked at the end of each one of the chapters. And there's even quizzes there too, where it'll just help you confirm that you learned what it is that you need to learn. So I don't look at the scores or anything like that, and you're the only one that sees the score, but it helps you to be able to feel confident that you've learned what it is that you need to learn. I even have audiobooks of the first book. So on YouTube and on our podcast, you can hear me reading the book to you, and it displays the book on the screen. So if you would like to look at it, you can look at it and hear it, or you could just listen to it if you'd like to listen to it. So there's all those options for you accessible from our website. And then there's in-person and online classes, courses, and retreats. You're always welcome to join either in person or online. They're always available at no cost. We have these two ongoing programs that are in person and online. One is called the Group Learning Program. That's a 7-month program where we go through the first book, chapter by chapter by chapter, every Sunday. And then on Wednesdays, I usually teach meditation and do meditation and open up to questions and from the students and provide answers. So over a 7-month period, you're gradually learning and growing and developing. And we actually just restarted this program about 3 months ago. But the first 3 months is essentially what you guys learned in this class. So if you guys joined into the group learning program now, which is meeting each Sunday, you'll be able to learn right where you've left off. So like this Sunday, we're going to be in chapter 9, which is what is Kamma and how does it affect me? The teaching I just gave you guys. And then next Sunday is what is merit, right? But then from that point forward, it's all going to be completely new for you guys. So it's like an ideal time for you guys to join into the group learning program if you'd like. And that meets each Sunday at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. So you can pick either one. If you're here, it's 9 a.m. here at the temple and I live stream it. I do it at home at 9 p.m. So no matter where you are, whatever time zone, you should be able to find a live class. So like in France, 9 a.m. Thai time probably isn't where you're interested in, because that's probably like 4 a.m. or 3 a.m. Time in France, right? So you probably would join the 9 p.m. class, which is probably like 5 p.m. 4 p.m. in France, right? So that's a better time for you. And then where you can't meet for the live class, they're all recorded, so you could just follow along. So a combination of reading the book and taking the live class or listening to the recording, you'll be able to slowly learn and slowly develop. So that's the group learning program. And then we restart that every 7 months. It's continuously happening every Sunday and Wednesday. And then there's the Words of the Buddha, the Pali Canon and English Study Group. This is a 1.5-year program that goes through volumes 2 through 13. This is more of a study group where what you guys have been doing is kind of learning in a more traditional method where I'm teaching, opening up for questions and these kinds of things. This one is more like a study group where I show the chapters of the Words of the Buddha. A student will read for about a minute or two, and then I will share teachings for about 5 minutes or so, and then I open up to questions. So it's more like a study group for 1.5 years. And those are the same things, Saturday morning at 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. And they're all recorded, so where you miss those, you would be able to watch the recording. So you guys could go into either one of these programs, because now you have a foundation in the path to enlightenment. You could, and some people do both. You can do both at the same time, or some people just do the group learning program. It's really up to you. And then after they finish the group learning program, they will move into the Pali Canon and English Study Group. But those are both accessible and available for you. And then there's various retreats and other courses, like not this Monday, but the next Monday, I think it's like the 16th or 17th of June, I'm starting a course called Experiencing the Jhanas and the 4 Stages of Enlightenment. You might be interested in taking that course. Kind of take the next week kind of a break, just do some meditation and read a little bit at home. But then about 10 days from now, I'm going to be starting a new course where it's going to be a 5-day course called Experiencing the Jhanas and the 4 Stages of Enlightenment. And I only teach this one twice a year, so it's kind of rare that I have that course. Then in August, there's going to be a retreat where the retreats go from 9 a.m. until 8:30 p.m. And we have a big part in the middle of the day where it's just like a break time. So there's various events that you can all see and you can access from our website if you'd like. Then you can schedule personal discussions, because as you're learning in these classes, as you're learning in the books and all these things, you're going to need help from your teacher. Because it's one thing to learn in a class like this, but it's another thing to be like, hey, my kids are doing this, or my life partner is doing this, and I'm really struggling with this. Can you help me with this? Or, my mom's in the hospital and, I'm really struggling with that. Or maybe there was a death in the family or something like this, and you're going to need some personal guidance. So you can meet with me here in Chiang Mai by just sending me a message, or anywhere else that I am in the world. As I travel around the world, you can just send me a message and we can schedule appointments. But if you'd like to meet online through Zoom, from our website, there's a little app that'll show you the times that are available, and you just schedule it there, and then we just meet in Zoom. So no matter where you are in the world, we can meet privately and personally. And that's all available for you at no cost too. It's unlimited. You can just schedule anytime you like. So there's personal guidance. And then there's a Facebook group that students oftentimes like to use, that you can ask questions in there. You can post, and then I'm the only one who answers them. The other students will read my reply because they're learning from your questions, just like here in class. When a student asks a question, you're learning from that. So there's some students who just go into the Facebook group to read other students' questions and to see the answers. So you can get help in 4 ways. You can ask questions in classes. You can you can ask questions in classes, you can post in the Facebook group, you can send me a private message, or you can schedule personal guidance. These are the 4 ways that you can get help. Okay, so the Facebook group is there for you as well. And as I've mentioned, it's all available at no cost for you guys. So any questions on this? No? Okay. So that brings us up to lunch. It's basically 12 o'clock. So I'm going to restart at 1:30, which is a little bit more than an hour and a half from now. So enjoy your break. If you'd like to come back this afternoon, I'm going to be sharing with you how to integrate the teachings into your day-to-day life, so that now that you've learned in this class, how do you integrate them into your life? And we have a certain activity that we're going to do this afternoon as well. So enjoy your lunch, and perhaps I'll see you after lunch. Okay? Thank you so much. Thank you so much.